Hello, everybody, and welcome out to this edition of Three Martini Solution Podcast, Episode 5. My name is Ryan. I'll be joined today by Casey and Emily, where we discuss a whole lot of great things, starting off with how two of the three of us were sick this week with COVID, some insights into the bartender industry, what bartenders are thinking about, report back on a board gaming convention that everybody went to this last week before getting sick, and a whole lot of other things, including Earth Day and what it's like to go to the dump these days. So thanks for joining in. I hope you enjoy the episode. And if you want to stay up with all things Three Martini Solution, go to 3martinisolution.com. Go to Twitter, the number 3_SOLN. Instagram, the number 3 Martini SOLN, all one word. And YouTube on 3 Martini Solution channel. Thanks a lot. Welcome, everybody, out to 3 Martini Solution Podcast, Episode 5 with Emily, Jessica, Casey, and myself, Ryan. Jessica's not here with us today due to some last-minute illness. Unfortunately, feel better, Jessica. We'll soldier on without you however we can. But let's get right into it. This was an exciting week. Two of you, 2/3 of the current podcast hosts were sick. Jessica was not sick with COVID, but Casey and Emily, you had COVID this week. And we didn't have a podcast last week because three of us were gone. We were away and doing our thing. And so it just didn't work out. But how was having COVID this week, Emily?
It's been rough. Still have it. Tested positive. I mean, it's still ongoing. Casey and I were commiserating about some of the symptoms, and early on, so my first symptom that I noticed was a sore throat. I got this tickly feeling in my throat, and because we were out of town and we were at this convention, I took a test because I thought, if there's any sign of anything, I need to get out of here. And I took a test, and it was negative. But then after that, the symptoms got progressively worse. But you were just saying when you were playing a game, Casey, how it felt.
Yeah, because I had also tested while I was there because I'd heard of other people getting it or whatever. And so I was like, I'll test. And so I tested negative and I was like, all right, I'm good. And, but the day before I came home, I was playing a game, and of course, it was right after lunch, so my brain is really good at explaining things away. So when I'm playing this game, and it's a simple game where you roll some dice, and the other person rolls some dice, and you do things, whatever. And I kept forgetting if I had rolled the dice or not. And I remember looking at the dice going, did I roll it, or what happened? It was like I was falling asleep, and then waking up and being like, but my head wasn't going, like usually when you fall asleep, you're like going like this. And I wasn't. It was like my brain was just like turning off and turning back on. I was like, what? And I'm like, oh, you must be in a food coma. That was a really good brunch you had.
The closest thing to COVID is a food coma.
Yes. Well, at least one of the symptoms.
One of the symptoms.
And the person that I went to brunch with and played that game with, negative, never got it.
Yeah.
Well, that's like this here. Emily's on the mend at this point, after about 3 or 4 days of it being pretty bad. But before she knew it was COVID and she just thought she was being sick after she took that first test. I mean, we were, of course, in the same bedroom together. We drove home together. It wasn't until we got back home, that she took another test and found out she was positive. That's when she kind of isolated. But up until that point, we were in pretty close contact. But I had like a little sore throat, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get it. That's it. And then, but I tested every day and never got it. Never tested positive, and the sore throat went away after a couple days before Emily started feeling better, and just gonna skip me. Decided, I guess.
Well, maybe you're obviously exposed, and maybe maybe the vaccine and your immune system were able to mount a quick response and kick it out, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know. a virologist or like a medical expert about how it works, but I mean, I heard once upon a time that that's sort of how it works. But
Well,
of
I
course,
don't.
I think the thing about COVID is I mean, if you go on the internet, which is a fun place, as we all know, you can find all sorts of everything about it. And
Whatever you want it to be, it'll be if you'll find somebody's agreeing with you on the internet.
I read something that so doctors, of course, have like search engines and things that they use, and they have the search engines that tell you what will save you. And then we have WebMD, which is what will kill you.
I like it. Right. For sure.
Because you get on WebMD and you're like, oh yeah, I'm dying. I'm dying.
Instantly.
Sure.
How it looks, it just looks like a scrape, but yeah, it could be dead. Well, yeah, I'm glad that both of you are feeling better now and ready to get back at it. But how was that? So you were there at that gaming convention for a week. How was that, Casey? What was
It
your
was
overall
great.
impressions of it?
Oh, anytime I get to hang out with, 300-400 nerds, it's not bad. It's a good time.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of fun individuals and fun types of people, and there's people that you meet only at these events and hang out with them, and you get to let your nerd flag fly, and it's just fine, and which is great. I mean, I love it. The reason why I like to play board games is because I get to interact with people, and it's like something to do where you're present with other people, and I like that. And you get to laugh and joke and all those things that make being around people fun. So
yeah. So my made up version of how the world works in my mind is like, as far as board gaming goes, is that people play games either for social reasons, which I think is probably why you and us play the games, but there's people that are very into the just strategic part of it, or the that sort of thing. There's a game out there for everybody, and I think new people getting into that particular hobby, they're always surprised by, like, I never even knew that there was this many games. I'd never even heard of this many games, right? That's a very common thing you hear when somebody gets into it, and it's really true. I think there's something out there for everybody. But Casey, did you play anything of note that you would recommend?
That's a good question. Yes, it's not a brand new game, but a new one that I discovered. And of course, because I'm a shameless Amazon shill, I have already purchased it. Actually, I didn't buy it on Amazon, but anyway, that's sort of what I think of whenever I'm like, oh, well, we'll buy now if I like it. It's Card Kingdoms of Valeria, and it's like you build like a little collection of cards in front of you that when you roll dice, you get things and can do things or whatever. But it's cute. The art's cute, and it's you can kind of do it together, and there's not a lot of downtime, so you're not like waiting for other people to do stuff for very long. So I like games like that because I'm impatient. Like if I have to wait for someone, I mean, you guys know this. Like in the gaming communities, there's that term called AP, or analysis paralysis, which because some people want to optimize every single turn, and I'm like, if you're the kind of person that wants to take 45 minutes to decide your optimal turn, we should not play games together, because I don't have time for that. And I'm like, great, you have fun, go play, just don't play with me.
That's
can't
right.
do it.
Well, and like before you said, like, oh yeah, these gaming conventions, everybody can let their nerd flag fly or whatever, which is really true, but there are different types. Like I think you go to those and you could pretty quickly spot like the table of somebody like with two tables pushed together, and they have like 1,000 little fiddly bits all scattered out, and you're like, that is not a game for me. That's a game that's going to last 36 hours and I want no part of.
Yes, and there's a caveat to that, because so if it's two tables together with only cardboard bits, then those people are in for the strategy and the analysis and the deep stuff. If, however, you're at my table when I have a big game laid out, it's because there are pretty miniatures that are awesome to go goo, goo, goo.
Right. And what's great about those conventions of any type is that if you are that person that wants to play the 12, 24, 36 hour game, you're going to find your people there. And if you're the kind of
Yeah.
person who wants to play something that plays within under an hour, set up, explanation, and tear down, well, you're going to find those people as well. So some little something for everybody.
I should confess you too. So I had a friend show up at the gathering at this convention, right? First time, not a big gamer, figuring things out or whatever. And what did we inflict on him?
Oh no.
Oh no.
I'm just going to say 2 words. Battlestar
I was just going to say
Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica. Oh no. I'm so sorry. I thought you wanted him to maybe come back again sometime. That's terrible. I almost didn't come back after playing that.
Battlestar Galactica, I don't know what it's officially called, but it's a cooperative board game, except there's a, I don't know what they call it in the game, but somebody who's...
I was a Cylon. We destroyed humanity. It was marvelous.
Yeah, you're like an undercover Cylon bad guy, and you can destroy everybody's cooperative mission. There's a famous incident from a few years ago when Emily was accused over and over again, but I don't even remember who accused her.
I was innocent.
But she was accused of being a Cylon because she acted exactly like one, and but swore she wasn't. Turns out she wasn't, and everybody lost anyways. But it ended up playing for like 3-4 hours before we got to the end of it and wrapped it all up. So since then, it's been notorious.
That incident was referenced in our session of playing. So remember that one time when Emily was a Cylon, and we're like, oh yes, we remember.
Yes. it is now a part of the game. It's an unofficial rule of the game that at some point you have to mention that Emily was a Cylon, even though she wasn't a Cylon.
Board games, it's like movies. I have like an hour and a half maximum that I want the game to play. I can't really, beyond that, I'm out. And I like party games, card games, things that are simple and quick turnover that we can play a first round quickly, because really I want to figure out the lay of the land, how scoring works, and I really need a whole round to do that whole game. And then I want to play again and once I know a little bit of the strategy.
Yeah. I like one of our friends, tells me, he's like, you make decisions quickly. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm impatient. And for me, like, I don't need to like win it, but I want to poke the game and see if I do this, what happens. Like that's that lay of the land thing. I like to see what happens when you do different things in the game. And I don't care if it's the best thing.
Right.
I'm just like, I'm going to do this thing. And yeah, I like that. But the interesting thing about some of the games when there's that negotiation or that personal thing, like you being a Cylon or whatever, it becomes part of the lore, and like that's what you remember. Like you don't remember the rules, but you remember that one time that was so funny because we have another friend that one of the first times they played Battlestar, like they this is, if you remember Delight, she played it and she played innocent. She was like, oh, what? And she pretended like she had no idea what was going on. So those of us who knew her were like, oh no, this is a total ploy. She is lying to you. But there's people who didn't know her and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. It was hilarious.
Right.
I mean, she was even batting her eyelashes. It was that shameless. It was a masterful performance.
What, me? You would accuse me?
Yes. And those people still remember that one time that Delight took them.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the funny thing, because as you get to being an adult, there's like very few instances maybe outside of a working relationship with somebody where you can like kind of see how they react under different sort of circumstances. But playing different board games like what you're talking about, the Battlestar Galactica one or another famous one, Werewolf, you get to learn a lot more about individuals and the depths of which they're willing to go to lie and how they lie and the tactics they use in lying. And some people are very good at it.
Yeah, friends. we became friends playing Werewolf, and I watched her lie over and over again.
That's why you're friends.
Yeah.
I like how you lie. We're the same kind of liar.
That was the biggest bummer about COVID is I wanted to stay up late and play Werewolf, and that was taken off the agenda once I got sick.
Yeah. So okay, well, speaking of intuiting things of people and figuring out the way people are. Not last week, I guess 2 weeks ago now, you
All
had
right.
mentioned the bartender thing. Like you really thought it was true. Bartenders can read a lot about people just by the way they walk in, order a drink, and leave. So tell us about it. You're a bartender.
Well, so like I think in terms of categories, right? Sometimes people show up and they're like they just want a beer, or they want something to like do or whatever, and they're like, you can quick and deal with it. But I think when you really figure out something about somebody is when they're asking about drinks, because a drink, there's more commitment involved, like you're going to pay more, and there's also this culture around it. Like, I mean, you have the whole James Bond, the shaken not stirred, right? Does anyone know what that means? I mean, some of us do, sure, but like I think a lot of people who say the shaken not stirred have no idea what the hell it means, but that's okay. But there's like this culture around it, and it's funny because I sometimes when I was a bartender, you get someone who'd show up and they'd be like, "All right, I want a blah blah blah," and they'd give you this name, and sometimes you're like, "I have no idea what that is," because there's so many drinks that have multiple names, and so then you have to engage in this sort of social dance where you're like, "Oh yeah, how do you like that?" Because there's different ways to make it. How do you like yours? And then they tell you, and as they're telling you, you're like, "Oh okay," and then you're starting to figure out what other recipe it's like or whatever, and then you can make it. But what's interesting is there are some people who never figure that out, that you're actually negotiating. They're like, "Oh yeah, this bartender knows," and you're like, "Okay, that's sort of that person." Like they're in their own world. You're sort of visiting, and you just follow their script, and they're unaware that other people really exist other than to serve their needs, which whatever. Other people are like, "Oh, there's new ways. Tell me about the other ways," and then you're kind of like, "Oh crap," because then I have to. So then you have to like back and forth. But then, and then there's pretentious people who are like, "Oh, I can totally tell the difference between this alcohol and this alcohol," which that is a very rare characteristic with probably super tasters or whatever. But like, no, like a lot of times people cannot tell. Like from bottom shelf to top shelf, yes, but sort of in the middle. And there's so much going on in here. So you can, the way you sell a drink and the way you sell something and talk about it, that's going to provide so much more. I mean, that's why drinks are pretty. Drinks, like all of that, so that you can, and some people know that and can like understand that, and others don't. Like, I mean, I think I told you the story last time about when people would want just a strong drink, because for what
Right.
that's a type of person, you can just pour a little gin down the straw, and boy, because that's a strong, noticeable, like you wouldn't do vodka, but you'd do a gin because they're going to notice that flavor. They're going to like suck that up and think it's like turpentine. So like, okay, fine, that's what you want.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I was always surprised. I am always surprised when people are very specific about the kind of alcohol they want in a heavily mixed drink, right? So when alcohol is like one of like 4 ingredients in a drink, the alcohol is just there to get you drunk. It's not there to be a big taste factor if it's like 1, or 20% of the drink, right?
yeah, I want $200 tequila in my frozen margarita.
Right. Sure you do. Right. No, you don't. You want something alcoholic and sweet that'll get you drunk. That's what you want. If you want a $200 thing of tequila, you're going to just order it straight, right?
Yeah. So for someone like that, I'd be like, no, you don't. Let's get you a mid-grade tequila, but then we'll put you some Grand Marnier on top or something, but we'll just float it on top so you taste that. Then you get the frozen and the taste and whatever. And then like, oh, I mean, I had people like that would come in, and then we would talk about what they would like, and you can find new things. That's actually the fun of being a bartender, is you help people find new things that they like, and help them explore that. Or people would come in and be like, "I don't like gin." I'm like, "You probably had crappy gin the whole time."
Right.
So, and then I would be like, "Let's try some of this really nice gin." They're like, "Oh, is that gin?" I'm like, indeed. That's why you come to bartenders.
Right. And am I right in saying that like the simpler, okay, like just a martini, like a gin martini, essentially has 2 ingredients. And so paying for a little bit nicer gin is going to be noticeable as opposed to
right. When it's
something
it's the main attraction, then you want it smoother. And I mean, and there's a nice general rule: plastic bottles, not good. Glass bottles, better.
So I do want to talk about more about some of the things that you would think of when somebody would walk in, and how you would spot them and that kind of stuff. But just as a former bartender professional, like vodka, like, I understand there's flavored vodkas now, but that, I was always told vodka is flavorless, no odor or no color, like that, just clear. And now they want to throw all this stuff into it. Is that weird that we're doing this with vodka?
Well, I mean, I could be completely pretentious to be like, yes, you shouldn't, whatever. But I think if you're drinking it, do whatever you want with it. I don't care what. I mean, find something that you like. Like if you like vanilla vodka and you like all these weird flavored martinis that taste like candy, fine. But I mean, but don't tell me you love vodka for vodka's sake, because I'll be like, no, you like the flavored stuff. So you want the vanilla, the blackberry, the whatever. I mean, now there's like, I mean, there's so many different kinds. Which, I mean, they have their uses, but don't tell me it's because you like vodka.
Right.
And you shouldn't put it like a martini.
Right. I mean, if you're going to do a vodka martini, I'm thinking that you're going to get a smooth vodka. It could be flavorless, it could be whatever, but it needs to be smooth going down. Yeah. And that's going to probably cost you a little bit more.
Yes, usually nice things cost more.
The things that don't.
Well, it's like steak, right? I don't mind that people order well done steak. Just don't ask me to share it with you.
Right. There you go. All right. So I walk into a bar. You're the bartender. What's the first thing that you're going to be looking for me to try to figure me out?
Oh, well, I would just you have to start asking questions, because I don't like to assume, first of all.
So you get nothing from my appearance.
No, I might think those things, but I'm going to ask questions.
Well, that's what I don't. That's what I want to know, what you're thinking when I walk in. You see me, or you see anybody. What's the checklist?
So right now you're wearing a Colorado shirt, right? Mm-hmm. You're a tall guy, you're a big guy, and I'm like, okay, this guy wants beer. Like, okay. That's a stereotype, right? This is a stereotype. Oh, this guy, like, this guy's still watching college football. So, all right, beer. That's a stereotype. But if all of a sudden you're like, I don't want beer. I want, I want some sort of like espresso martini with vanilla vodka, please. And I'll be like, okay, misread that. But then also I'm going to be like, tell me more, Mr. Interesting. Because I want to know about this 6'3" guy.
Then the drink becomes the conversation starter, right?
Yeah.
Why do you want that on a Saturday morning?
Is it morning already?
Is your weekend going okay? Do we need to talk feelings already?
So are there other stereotypes? I mean, stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason a lot of the times. Like, I got to think that if you're a bartender, you're seeing hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people walk through the door. Eventually, people are going to walk in looking a certain way, or their body language is a certain way, and you're going to make some assumptions.
Yeah.
I mean, what are some of the other ones?
You want money, right? So the way you get money from people is you make them comfortable. So you talk to them about what their issues are. Do they want to talk to you? Do they not want to talk to you? Right? Because sometimes people come to a bar because they want to chat.
Yeah.
Like I had people that come when I was a bartender that would come because they wanted to explore different kinds of drinks, because I liked to make different kinds of drinks. Like, and I was open about, hey, I have these recipe books. And so they would look through and we would figure out which ones they would want to try. Right. Which was super fun, because then I could make things I hadn't made in a long time or whatever. But yeah, you do that. And sometimes, then there's the quote unquote girly drink, which I think is ridiculous. But if you like fruity drinks that are in bright colors, then by all means drink that fruity drink in bright colors. Like, I don't care. It's because many of them taste really good. Like Mai Tais and rum runners and stuff can taste really good if they're made well.
Are you saying sweet food has nothing to do with gender?
Yeah, right. I love sweet food. You know this. Which, back to COVID, Emily, I have to confess. I went to Lewiston, and I went to that bakery that you know about.
Yes.
And I had purchased some things, but I'm like, I can't, because I didn't know that you were sick at the time, or what, I knew you were sick, and I'm like, she can't taste whatever. So like the chocolate pie and the coconut pie that I bought, I'm like, I had to eat them all by myself.
Thank you for
I
doing
was
me
going
that
to bring them
kindness.
to you.
That was so great that you kept them. Thank you. I couldn't have tasted them. I couldn't have enjoyed them.
But you never
They
really
were,
lost your sense of taste. It was more that your congestion that kept you from tasting. Is that
Yeah,
right?
and just a lack of appetite.
Hmm.
yeah,
Just not.
that was me. Yeah, I didn't lose my
Yeah.
taste either. They were pretty tasty.
Yeah.
They cut through all the congestion and excellent.
Absolutely. They probably are the secret to my recovery. The fact that I had sugar.
Gosh, it
So,
probably is. Next
I'll just
time.
have to,
Next time.
I have to go back and I will have to repurchase and rebring, because that bakery has those, those pies, and they're like this thick. They're like little chunky pies.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. So good. One was a chocolate crust with like a salted caramel, and then chocolate cream, and then whipped cream and like peanuts. And it was
That's a special talent I think that we share, is going to places and finding the best of the places within any area. And that is one of the bakeries. And then the restaurant that's usually open across the street, but I know they were closed that week that we were there. But that bakery is great.
No, I went to that barbecue place that I first went with you guys.
Oh yeah, was it great?
It was really yummy.
Oh,
it's still good.
Yeah.
So I thought of you because we were one table away from where we sat the first time. I remember, I was like, Emily and Ryan, I sat right there with them.
I love that.
Was it the Brickyard Barbecue or something like that?
Yep.
Good memory.
Good barbecue. Well,
And
I can't remember a lot of things. I can remember barbecue places.
And this morning I got a Shutterfly update of like, relive this memory from 10 years ago. And it was From the Gathering, and it was Stu coming out of the swimming pool. Like, like I'm like, look how little that boy was. He was so cute. I remember how much he loved the swimming pool. So
Yeah.
Still does.
and I'm like, 10 years I've been going to this convention. It's nice.
Yeah. Good.
I won't say we're old because we're not.
No, that's what young people do.
Yeah, young people get old.
Young people.
They're like this, don't get old.
I thought you colored
Like
your
the
hair
way you
that way.
think about it.
No? All right. Well, it's been quite a week. Another thing that happened this last week, it was Earth Day. So I want to hear from you two first. What did you guys do to celebrate Earth Day?
I didn't leave my house.
I did not pollute at all by staying home. I didn't drive my car.
Good. These are all good things. What a way to take it to heart. Yeah, no, I I didn't realize it was Earth Day, but I was like, oh, what interesting things happened this week as I was looking up. Obviously we had other things to think about this week, but then, once we got back to things, I'm like, oh, okay, Earth Day happened. I think it was Friday. I think it was yesterday.
I noticed that on social media because, like Instagram in particular, all of your friends who post something about like Earth Day and use their filter or whatever they do, like it lumps them into one. And so then you touch on the Earth Day story and it's like, here's all your friends that did Earth Day. And you're like, okay. So it's helping you group your friends into categories more than you already do.
So there's what do you mean? There's a filter? Like an Earth Day filter?
Like if you use the little, it was like a little, almost like a sticker on whatever you were doing.
Oh.
That was like it was like an Earth, but in the shape of a heart that had like arms and legs or something.
Got it.
That's nice.
I didn't notice that on any of your guys' social media or mine.
Well, because on my Instagram, I post two things and two things only: games and food.
The two most important things to Casey.
Right. It's like, it's a dopamine thing. I only want that. There are no other things that go on there but games and food. It's happy that I can scroll through and I'm like, oh yeah. And obviously many of my memories are about games and food. We've talked about them today. And I scroll through my Instagram. I remember all the games and food that I've had with people. So I don't have to remember any like flame wars or like arguments because I don't discuss any of that on social media. So it's a happy thing. It's like social media can be a force for good.
You just have to block out 99% of everything else going on.
Exactly. Just stay away from all of that other stuff.
Great. Well, the other thing that happened to me in the last couple of weeks that was of interest is I went to the dump for the first time in many years. I guess, well, that's not true. Maybe last year I went, I helped a friend take something to the dump, but me taking stuff to the dump, it's been many years since I've done that. Have you been to the dump lately? I mean, I know this is a riveting conversation. Casey, have you been?
So I have a sedan, so I never go to I've never been to the dump here in my current place. When I lived in where I came from originally, yes, where I lived in a small town, so you had to go to the dump like all the time.
Okay,
you
great.
got a pickup truck, throw everything back there and head to the dump.
Right. Now, maybe this is a local thing, but the dumps here are not as fun as the dumps that I remember like in the 80s when I was a kid.
Well, so we all picture the same thing when we think of the dump, right? Like chain link fences and stuff piled really high, like cars that are piled like this, and dogs. There's some dogs there.
No, I grew up in a small town in Utah, Emily. So no, it was like
put it in the pile and burn it.
It was sort of like a drop off thing, and there were no chain link fences. It was like none of it. This is just that one place.
Well,
I'm thinking scrap metal, but it's all the same.
You might be thinking of a scrapyard, but it is very similar because I think that when I think of the dump and you see the dump on like TV shows or movies, there's like just big piles of trash, right? And you big equipment pushing things over and smashing things down and doing things. And that's what I remember as a kid. Not here. Here you take it to an area and it's like paved and you dump it out, and then the big tractor comes by and pushes this kind of junk that way and that kind of junk this other way, and they separate out everything, but it doesn't go into a big pile, right? But that is infinitely less fun because when I was a kid, it was like go out and there was like just this big open area and you just back up to close to the last pile that got dumped and dump your stuff there. But there's just piles and piles of stuff. And so as a kid, you'd walk around, hopefully you had your tetanus shot, and you look through all this kind of stuff to see what crazy things people threw out, right? But it's like, that's not how they do it here.
I don't know about you, Em. I looked from afar at those things. I would never go pick through to see what things, because I was always like, all these other people are throwing away weird stuff, and I'm sure I'll get a disease from it. Even as a young child, I was like that. I was afraid of what other people were throwing out.
Oh, I mean, that was like the only place like where, your dad wouldn't yell at you for like breaking a bottle. Like you take a bottle and like break it and.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And you could just.
That's sure.
While the adults were actually working, unloading stuff, you're exploring the dump, right? There's a big pile of battery acid over there. You got to avoid that. If there was a big pile of, so, and the other thing, like you would climb sometimes. I don't know, at least we did. We would climb up some of the mounds of garbage just to kind of whatever.
So, Ryan, I'm actually really impressed that you survived childhood. This is good.
I thought going to the dump was a thing that everybody did. No? Maybe it's just my family.
I just think.
What do you want to do for entertainment? Let's go to the dump.
We just did it in different ways. You were over like battery acid.
I mean, we don't do that thing these days for good reason. Going back to Earth Day, I understand why they have it a little bit more organized these days, but it wasn't as fun. Like I took our youngest, and I think he thought it was neat, but I don't think he thought it was neat in the same way I thought the dump was neat when I was his age.
If you would have said you can go, climb up that pile of crap over there, he probably would have had a really good time, but he may not have realized what kind of dad he was going to the dump with.
Normally dad would be like, don't climb to the top of that hill of mattresses. But dump dad would be like, oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you didn't tell him he was going with dump dad. Yeah.
So are you telling me that you as a dad are less fun than your dad was? Because your dad lets you climb on the trash piles and you don't let your little boy climb on trash piles?
I'm not altogether convinced that the reasons behind why my dad did or did not let us climb on the piles of trash. There's a better than average chance he had no idea what we were doing.
Okay.
So
Fair. Just wanted to check.
yeah.
Clarification.
Well, and then there's somebody at this dump here that I think yells at you too if you try to do stuff that's too dangerous. Like some guy parked in the wrong area, and that was an incident, right? You can't back up into this area. You have to back up into this other area so they can keep all the trash separated.
How embarrassing for that guy.
I mean, like, honey, I got yelled at the dump. What did you do? I backed up because it was a dump. So I backed up to the trash, and the guy yelled at me. Why? It was a wrong pile of trash.
This is what I get for taking my trash to the dump on Earth Day.
It was on Earth Day, wasn't it? When was Earth Day? Friday? I think Earth Day was Friday. And Friday I did go to the dump. That's what I did for Earth Day. That, and I decided that I would try to use one less sheet of paper towel when I do bacon.
You've made a commitment to that moving forward, or just that day?
I tried it out. I'm not going to do it moving forward. It doesn't work as well at all. I'm going to have to save the earth some other way. Yeah.
So when you say paper towel doing bacon, how do you use paper towels when you do bacon?
Oh, well, you lay it out on a plate, the paper towel. I use 3 sheets of paper towel, and then you lay the greasy bacon on that, and it absorbs the grease from the bacon. You put,
so after the bacon has been cooked.
After the bacon's been cooked, put it on there, soak up the excess grease, and then you have delicious, less greasy bacon.
Are these Selecta-size paper towels? Like
these are Selecta-size.
So you're choosing the smaller.
Correct.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's like 1.5.
So it's really 1.5. So I use 1 instead of 1.5. But I'm going to go back to the 1.5. Works much better.
So if the powers that be, the giant paper towel cabal, if they just reduced the Selecta-size by just the slightest percentage, not that this happens in any consumer category, then they would force you to be more paper towel.
You know what I'm willing to do? I'm willing to work with the big paper towel conglomerates to cook as much bacon as they can. If they want to pay me to cook bunches of bacon, and we can test how small they can go before I notice. Yeah.
Wow. What just a generous thing.
But I get to pick the type of bacon and I get to eat it all, and they have to pay me. These are my terms. But I could help them out.
Those are generous terms. I mean, other companies even less for your data.
Right. I have a lot to say.
I sort of wanted to talk to Jessica because I wanted to hear about her drinks because I know she has opinions.
Opinions about like what drinks, as far as what that she just likes generally. Yeah,
so that would be interesting. Like what's the things that she likes and stuff. But just it was a curiosity thing. But that's why I like being a bartender, right? I'm curious about people. Like when they come in, like, why do you like that drink? Why is that your favorite drink? Why do you like this particular brand of whatever it is, right? And I was always collecting information and then I would share that with other people. Like, I like the position of a bartender because it's a social hub position.
You probably get hit on all the time. You get hit on. You probably got hit on a lot as a bartender, I imagine.
A little. Like I'm not good at recognizing when I'm being hit on.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I'm just not. But I've been told that.
I've been trying to hit on you for the last 45 minutes. Have you picked up on any of that? No? Okay.
Yep. Maybe we'll have to have a guest appearance one day.
So, well, the one thing that I always thought was interesting that required somebody to be a good bartender is being able to just BS about anything. Like you have to just be able to talk about whatever that person is walking in, sits down and tells you, like, oh, you're an attorney, you're a doctor, you're, you sell life insurance, whatever, you're a, second grade
Yeah.
teacher, whatever it is, you got to, the good bartenders had something that they could talk to that person about, even if it wasn't exactly about the thing that they did, right?
Yeah. It's like you're in control, but all you do is you're the yes and, right? Like that's your job as the bartender, to be like, yes, and you feed just enough to get them talking. Like you're not doing as much of the talking. Like sometimes people want to talk to you or whatever, but and they want to hear a little bit from you, but they really don't. They most everybody wants to just talk about themselves and their things, which that's what bars are for a lot of times. And so you learn to facilitate that.
What is
That's probably why board games, because board games do the same thing. They facilitate that talking among people, and I've always loved that. So yeah, you learn that skill of like feeding just a little bit, and then you watch people go.
So what would you say were the kind of customers that you like to see? And if it's not you, maybe generally speaking, what are the things that a bartender wants to see out of somebody coming in and ordering drinks?
Like for me, like I always appreciated people who were willing to try something new, like and who could tell me what they liked, so they could then try something new. And even if they wanted to go back to whatever they did like and stuff, but those were fun customers, because then you could explore like together new things. So I mean, I think chefs are the same way. If you go and you talk to a chef and you're like, I like this, 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 and this, and then the chef's like, oh, well, I think you're gonna love this dish, and they bring it to you, and you're like, oh my gosh, because then they're super happy because they helped you discover something, and you are super happy because you just got a brand new dish that you like or something. Like those, I think, are the best customers, because they understand how food and drink works. Like food and drink is a pleasurable thing. It's nourishment, but it's 10% nourishment, I think, and like 90% like pleasurable. Like that's why we don't just eat, shredded protein or whatever, dry dog food. We want interesting things, and people who are open to that and like to do that, then it makes it a fun experience for the person who is crafting whatever it is. Because like if you're just like, I could never be like a beer bartender where you're just pouring beer.
Right.
Like if it's like one of those places where there's all sorts of fancy beers and different flavors and whatever, then yes, that would be more interesting, because I want to talk to people about what they like and things. But it's always the curious people who are brave enough to want to explore and experience, like they're open to the experience. Those are the best customers.
You haven't been a bartender in a number of years, and I know, things in terms of liability have changed, right, in the last couple of decades. When you were a bartender, you must have had certain rules, or maybe you didn't, about cutting people off.
Mhm.
Did you have to cut a lot of people off, and how did that go?
Not many, because so some people I would just shamelessly control. Like you would start to ignore them, or because you would pace them, right? And you knew how to pace them, and you would suggest drinks that were less strong, or you'd make it maybe less strong sometimes or whatever. Because but I wanted people to know that I'm looking out for them. Like some people would come in and I'd be like, look, let's wait for a second, or so you could pace them. And then as soon as I had some customers who were like, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry about if I'm drinking too much because you're watching me. And like, if I said, hey, I think you've had enough for a bit, they'd be like, oh, great, thanks. Like, I'll take a water or something. Like, and so that was actually great. And I liked having that. So, but that also made me concerned, because I look at that as the part of the job as a bartender. You're supposed to, they are there to have a good time. So you need to facilitate that, right? If they get drunk and do something stupid, that's not a good time for them, and sure not a good time for you. So if you help them do that and have that good time in a safe way, that's what it's supposed to be. But yeah, sometimes you would. So I didn't have to cut people off tons, because I would find ways to make it happen without telling them what was going on necessarily. So like, because you can do that, or you can just be like, So not tons, I guess. I mean, and maybe I've just forgotten those things. Like, I don't like to think about those people. But still, you have to watch. If you're a good bartender, you got to watch people.
Yeah.
The people that are at the bar. I'm not talking about all the people like you're making drinks for that are like going somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But like the people at the bar that you're sort of taking care of, like those are different. Like that's like your table as a server type thing, and you're watching out for them. But like if you're a bar back and or a back bartender where you're just making drinks for all the rest of the restaurant and stuff, then that's a different situation. You are a machine at that point. You're just throwing them out because there's a whole restaurant full of people who are thirsty type thing. Yeah.
Right. So in that situation, when you have a whole restaurant full of thirsty people, like, are there, like, I'm sure like a very complex drink where it takes several, processes to get it to where you want to be. I don't know, maybe like a fruity, like
one word,
tropical
blender.
drink, a blender drink, right? Those are going to be a pain in the butt, right?
Absolutely every time.
Every time.
And I was a bartender in good old Provo, Utah. So in Provo, Utah, some people are drinking, but a lot of people are having smoothies. So I had 2 blenders running a lot, and we would, so there are a lot of smoothies I had to make.
Well, if you're in that situation where it's real busy, like how many ingredients? Like I assume like a rum and Coke is pretty easy. You just pour in the alcohol, top it off with some Coke, and slide it on. So those 2 ingredient cocktail sort of things, those got to be pretty easy to. Is there a limit though, where you're like, okay, now it's at this point where it becomes a pain in the ass?
It's more like what the preparation is. Like if you have to muddle something, that's going to take time. Because in order to muddle something appropriately, like you need to take it. Some things just take time if you're going to do it right. Anything where you're just like layering or mixing stuff, even if it's a quick shake in a shaker, that's faster. But if like you have to muddle something, you have to blend something, or if you have to do something creative with the twist and do all of the preparation of the glass and stuff. And I think a lot of times in the bar backs, they don't do that as much because they're just getting it out to the table and the table doesn't know that you've done it. It's different when you're at the bar because there's a presentation to the whole thing. And so you're doing it for the person in front of them. Like when you're watching the bartender make the drink, like you're consuming not just the drink, but you're consuming the presentation of the creation of the drink too, which is different. But like for the other ones, like, but so if you're just layering alcohol, man, it's whether it's 2 ingredients or 5, it's not that big of a change. But once you have to do machine-like things like muddling and shaking for a really long time and blending, or layering, if you're just dumping and mixing, that's one thing. But if you have to like layer carefully so that
so you get separation, How do you ever think about that when you go to order drinks at a bar?
No, I don't. I remember growing up and thinking it'd be fun to take a bartending class, right? I think everyone's thought that, like, it'd be great. I could just be a bartender on the weekends. But no, I don't think about the work for the bartender at all when I go up there. I'm just happy to be ordering.
And you shouldn't. Don't worry about that's their job.
I get a little intimidated by ordering from a bar, I think, because I don't know a lot about different drinks. And so if a bartender asked me, like, how do I want my Cosmo made? I'd be like, I don't know, good? Like,
sweeter
make it nice for me, please. But I get a little intimidated by doing that. I think a bartender's job, depending on if you're working at a restaurant or if you're like at a bar late at night, you have different responsibilities. Right? Like I certainly when I was single and going out, I remember bartenders like watching out for us as single women, and that was like really nice if you had like a good bartenders because they were watching out and making sure your drinks got to you without anybody slipping anything in. And that was like my memories of bartenders or things like that.
Yeah, I had to do that when I was in Seattle. I still remember one where a guy and a man and a woman were at the bar, and the woman went to the bathroom, and the man was like, "Make her drink extra strong." And I'm like, oh no. And I was watching her for the rest of the night to see how she was reacting to him, and see, because then that like raises your antenna to be like, is this an okay relationship? But what's going on here? Like when you're like, I mean, the simple way is I'm like, look, if you can't get laid on your own, then you're not getting it with me, buddy. But on the other hand, I'm like, if this is a bad situation, I need to make sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. I do sometimes like if the bar is busy, I'll think about what I'm ordering. But when I see like at a restaurant, if I see they hand me a cocktail list, I don't care how complex it is to make because they're advertising it, right? They want you to
They're
order it.
prepared to make those
So that
drinks.
if you're if you're going to be a bartender in that establishment, I think you've signed on to the fact that maybe sometime you're gonna have to make a bunch of crazy drinks that are a pain in the
oh,
ass.
but if you're advertising it, no. That special drink menu that's there, that's not where the crazy stuff is. And if it is a little bit crazy, they've got it like sandbagged and prepped in the back in like an efficient way. Like you prepare, like if you're a good bartender, you're ready for those crazy drinks because you're gonna have certain things pre-mixed and you're gonna have it already ready and all that, you're gonna have your smoked rosemary already done in a
Okay.
what thing or whatever. But it's the things that are hidden on the menu. Like if you want the really complex drinks, those are not the specials.
Ah, okay. Did your place have like a pre-made Long Island iced tea mix?
No, no, I worked for Fridays and we would make it, we had pre-made sour, like just the sour that would go into
Right.
well, not pre-made, it was like a mix and it was Friday's mix, and Friday's sour mix is great. But no, we would make it with all of the alcohols right there. So that's when I learned that Long Island iced tea is supposed to be smooth. It's a strong drink, but it should not taste strong.
Right. It's deceptive. That's why
It is supposed to be.
Right.
So
Now, like in that article that I had done a couple of weeks ago, the bartender says, Long Island iced tea, it's gonna be a problem. Did you notice that when some people would order certain drinks, like, oh, this is gonna be a problem later on tonight?
oh yeah, you can tell. Especially if people are like, oh, I want this and I want it strong. Like when people are like insisting from the get-go it needs to be strong, you're like, okay, you're here for a certain type of experience and it's probably going to be a problem. Or if they keep sending it back because it's not strong enough, you're like, okay, you're one of those. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's when you engage
So stop
in
doing that.
I've never done that.
Right. But that's when you become social control. Like I think in the service industry, you learned crowd control, right? You learn how to manage people and their experiences and expectations. Good ones, good bartenders and stuff too.
Well,
Good servers do too.
I agree. And I've always had this theory that I think people should be in some sort of service industry at least once in their life. Like people that have never been in a service industry, I assume that if I see somebody acting poorly out in public, I'm like, you have never been in a job where you've had to interact with the public. You've never had a job where it was your job to put on a smiley face, even when you wanted to throttle somebody. Because if you had, you wouldn't be acting the way that you're acting.
Yeah. These are fun to watch on Twitter because I think it was this last week, I saw someone on Twitter that's like, I used to work out in a restaurant and I don't understand why they don't seat parties when the whole party isn't there. And I'm like, if you don't understand why restaurants don't do that, then you were the worst server and had no idea how to serve tables. Like if you can't see the economics of a restaurant, like, butts in seats mean if you're not making money off of that, you need to get new butts in that seat, like whatever. Yes, it's an experience and all of that, but people are making money. It's their job.
Yeah. Well, I've always thought, going back, Emily said earlier that, always thought it'd be interesting to take a bartending class. But I think being a bartender is a great backup profession, right? It's kind of like, I think there's certain things like being a bartender, being able to cut hair, like knowing how to do like auto mechanic stuff. These are just kind of like jobs that, even if it's not your main profession, if you know how to do it, it's going to get you a lot further ahead in life.
Always be able to work. You'll always be able to support yourself.
You always be able to work. You always have that backup, hard physical skill when your mind goes to mush, as mine has.
I don't want someone cutting my hair whose mind has gone to mush. Thank you.
Okay.
Call me crazy.
Fair enough.
Or actually, I don't want someone, a lot of those things, like when your mind has gone to mush, people should be taking care of you at that point.
Oh, good.
Agreed.
My mind has been there for a number of years. Feel free to take care of me at this point. Emily can use the help.
I'll make you some strong drinks.
That would help a lot. Okay. Well, is there any parting words that you would have for us? I think we're almost at an hour now. We're at the point where we want to wrap up. Anything for us?
Stay safe. COVID sucks.
Hope everyone feels better.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone,
sure.
Thanks for listening. We'll get this turned around and out. Thanks a lot. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.